next Saturday night, we're sending you back to the future.
Hi, this is John Barber from IDW Publishing. You are listening to The Pull Bag.
You've just jumped inside The Pull Bag. Join TFG1Mike and the rest of the comic reading crew here at the GCRN as they make their great escape into comics. From DC, Marvel, IDW, Boom Studios, Zenoscope, and more, we have everything you want to read right here. Transformers comics? Yeah, we cover that. He-Man? Yeah, sure. DC superheroes like Batman, Batgirl, Nightwing, and Batman Beyond? Yep, we have those too. How about TMNT from IDW and I Hate Fairyland from Image Comics? Yeah, we have all that here. Plus, so much more. It's all inside the Pull Bag here on the Geekcast Radio Network. So without any further ado, it's time to talk about the comics we are reading right now here inside the Pull Bag.
Let's see if you bastards can do 90.
Hello and welcome to the Pull Bag. Yes, that's right, Marty. We can do 90. This is episode 390 here inside the Pull Bag. I'm, of course, TFG1Mike. Joining me is JT from Saskatoon. Hello, sir.
Good day.
And we are here to, quote-unquote, finish our Back to the Future coverage, at least for the main series that IDW has. They are currently in the process of doing Transformers Back to the Future crossover 4-issue miniseries, and I did not even know this. There was a comic done by Periscope Entertainment called Back to the Future. It's written by David Guy Levy. Back to the Future tells the story of what would happen if the filmmakers of Back to the Future went back in the film and made sure Eric Stoltz was never replaced by Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly, the puppy in the popular film series. First of all, let me just say this. I only ever saw the Michael J. Fox, Marty McFly stuff. I have seen since, but back then when I was a kid, I only ever saw the Michael J. Fox stuff. It was years later that I found out about Eric Stoltz, and I'm like, I don't care. Whatever. Marty McFly is Michael J. Fox.
Yes, because Hollywood lives and dies in whether or not you like something, Mike.
No. But I'm saying, like, it's kind of like whether Die Hard's a Christmas movie or not. It's not. But it's one of those things where it's that thing of, oh, it should have been this guy, or it should have been the original guy, or it should have been... Well, I didn't even know there was an original guy at the time. I thought Alex P. Keaton was the original guy.
Yeah, that tends to happen in productions. I mean...
Well, true.
The whole thing, like, Eric Stoltz is a great actor. And, I mean, I've seen that stuff too, and it's like, well, yeah, but, you know, it's just those few scenes that have survived to this day. Like, it's not like he shot the whole movie and then they 86'd him from the production. It's, you know, fact of life. It's not unlike, you know, may he rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman passing. You know, now they're still going to go ahead with Black Panther 2, but, you know, everyone's saying, well, you shouldn't recast him because he was so good, but, you know, they probably will. It's like when Christopher Reeve stopped being Superman, I'm sure there were people that bitched and complained when Dean Cain became Superman in Lois and Clark. Like, you just can't satisfy people, so, you know, stuff didn't work out for Mr. Stoltz, and he went on to do, was it Mask and so many other things throughout the years, although the first movie I saw him in was Prophecy with Christopher Walken. So, it's, yeah, I mean, it didn't work out. And you just imagine if they got somebody like the guy that played Father Guido Sarducci from SNL to play Doc Brown instead of, you know, Christopher Lloyd, what the franchise might look like now. So there's an 80s reference for you, kids.
Yep, absolutely. So Back to the Future, as I said, this is wrapping up our main IDW Back to the Future coverage. Tales from the Time Train. I was very underwhelmed with this.
You weren't just whelmed?
No, very underwhelmed with this. Yeah, it just, I don't know, it just didn't, it's not the Doc story that I wanted to see. with him and his family going on a vacation, really, you're going to go back to the night. And I get it. The World's Fair, the New York World's Fair thing was great and whatever else, but it's on the precipice of World War II. And then they make the story around, you know, quote unquote Nazi invaders, because they don't directly say that Bratvia or whatever the hell the country's called that they use in this trade. They don't directly say it's Germany, but it's an allegory.
Well,
and,
yeah.
I don't know. It just didn't. The greatest thing that this book did was show us the end of the third film in comic form.
Yeah. No, that's what, like, as we talked about the last time I was on with Time Served, and, you know, how they take off, and, you know, I think I said presumably they're going to... I thought I misremembered this series because when I read it, you know, a few years ago when it first came out, I thought they were going to end the series with. I remember them ending. I remember them ending the series with, you know, Doc and the family Brown going back to the end of Part 3 and reuniting with Marty and Jennifer, and you know, it's like Doc Brown had brought this from the future, you know, with Jennifer with the "you're fired" fax and all that, but they do that here, and then I love the fact that they end this first issue of the series where, you know, they've gone on vacation to like the World's Fair, but it's like the World's Fair 2038, and it's a future where Professor Irving has become a much more benevolent purveyor of
time
robotic, robotic devices. And I mean, just in this first issue where he's like, "Okay, boys, go blow off some steam," and Jules and Vern do that, and they create time travel shenanigans just like the cartoon.
Yep.
Or at least it's what we assume is time travel shenanigans, because initially, like, there's like knights and Mongols and oh my, and a dragon, and then there's robots and demons on horseback, and we find out that they're in this basically it's like a Westworld, except not nearly as violent and or adult themed as the HBO series, and Claire is giving Emmett kind of the business the whole time. She's like, "You said this was supposed to be a vacation. Let the boys..." Like, Mary Steenburgen, I love her as Clara, and I heard her voice coming through as she's nagging Emmett like this, and he does the right thing. He goes to, like, an information booth, and it's like, "I believe several of the machines are malfunctioning," and getting sass from, like, the acne-scarred redhead that's running the counter.
Yep.
Although I do love when they go outside and Clara gets accosted by these advertising drones.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
And I'm just like, oh dear God, that's where our future is heading, isn't it?
I'm surprised we're not already there, honestly.
Well, you get all those flash ads on, you know, if you don't have an ad blocker on your browser when you're surfing the internet, you know.
Yep.
It's just, what the hell. I also have to, I've never really, and this is just goes to me being a fan of the franchise and being the sort of guy who just wants to understand how something works. I don't need to get into the technical nitty gritty.
Mm-hmm.
But it's clear that the main propulsion drive of the train on the back there is just hooked on like a normal train car. So how is this thing not just like like dragging the rest of the train down, or, you know, hanging down like a certain part of a dog? Because, like, physics, Doc Brown has made it his bitch.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this: how did you? I mean, we can curse on here. I don't care. How did you read this? Did you read it in single issue or trade?
I read it originally in single issues, and then in preparation for the recording, I read it in trade.
Okay, in the trade, there's the letter from Bob Gale at the beginning.
Yeah.
And in the back of the trade is it's the actual time travel, the time train manual, instruction booklet, whatever you want to, blueprints kind of thing. I thought that was really cool that they included that to basically answer the question you just had. So you can look at that and see how it's supposed to work.
Yeah, no, I saw that at the end there. I just, basically read the story and left it at that. But, they go back to the train to get Einstein, and we go to the end of part 3, and you see that conversation of, Doc's upset with the boys, and Claire's like, well, you did tell them to blow off steam, and they did. And, just to intercut my parents in the positions of Doc and Clara, I can totally imagine my mom saying that, and then the look on my dad's face of like Doc Brown giving her the eyes like that. He's like, they blew off more than steam, Lori.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when they decide to take him. I love the way they stress or highlight certain words in the comic, where perhaps the boys need a more controlled environment.
Yep.
And then you see the look on Claire's face, and she's like, "Oh God, what is he planning now?"
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like the art. I like the story up until the end of chapter 3.
Mm-hmm.
And in chapter 4 to 6, we have the whole, I'm just going to say, Nazi plot.
The most family friendly Nazis you will ever find. I defy you to find a more family friendly version of the German forces of World War II than pardon me, perhaps Indiana Jones. Yeah. And those were still some pretty close to being straight up Nazis.
Yeah. And before I get too far into this, I should say that the story was done by John Barber and Bob Gale. John Barber did the script. The art was done by Megan Levens, and the colors were done by Charlie Kirchhoff. Letters done by the impressive Sean Lee, as always. So Denton J. Tipton was the editor, along with Chase Moratz. I liked what the IDW Back to the Future stuff did to this point. By issue 4 of this, I didn't want to finish the story.
Really?
Yeah. Because it's just, to me, it's just another property taking on the World War II story in a time where supposedly the Germans have won, because there's all these rules and whatever else or whatever. Like, that's what I got from this. And I'm like, really? That's the time travel story you want to take Doc and his family on? Like, I get what Bob Gale and John Barber are trying to do. They're trying to find a time that, like at the end of the third film. No, I already been to the future. I'm going somewhere else. Well, how about you go somewhere else that doesn't involve Nazis? Like,
well,
you already mentioned, or you already referenced Indiana Jones. I mean, there's no better defeat the Nazi story than Last Crusade, and then later on The Rocketeer.
God, I gotta watch The Rocketeer now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, they've never, the whole series, the German agents that are in America to kidnap Einstein, like, this is within proper historical confines. This is the World's Fair in, was it 1939? Yeah. World War II hasn't quite kicked off yet, or is in the early offing, and this is around the time where Germans, because of their actions, is like, look, you guys aren't allowed in America because the two agents that have come here to kidnap Professor Einstein. And I love how I never thought of this before, and then maybe it's also a consequence of the art here, that Doc Brown is Einstein.
Yeah,
like
pretty much.
He's the 80s Einstein in this world, and I guess you could see how why would he shave his mustache, Hans?
Yeah.
You know, and we get into the issue too with Doc like putting GPS bracelets on everybody. He's like, Jules, don't trust you. Vern, don't trust you. Clara, they're your children.
Yeah, exactly.
And he even gives it to Einie, and I love Einstein giving that wine, and he's just like, dude, really? I'm the most responsible one in this whole goddamn family.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, like the whole dog switcher. Like, I did not need a side story with Einstein. And Prince Rufio from Neverland did not need that.
I don't even refer to him as Rufio anymore, Dante Vasco. It's just Zuko. From here till the end of time is like, man, I used to be Rufio. You're Zuko now. I that's part of the story I didn't like as well. Like I didn't hate it. I didn't think it was unnecessary, but it's I feel like it's narrative clutter. But I think overall it works in the long run, because I'm not saying it would have been boring, but you need to break up the whole Germans trying to kidnap Doc because they think he's Einstein.
I get that,
and then
but they could have
Einstein
done
having this whole Prince and the Pauper story with the Queen of Baratavia.
Yeah,
which is one of the things that how a lot of stories, and never mind time travel, just in stories where you can't use an actual country. Mm-hmm. So you create your own country, like how they created Latveria in Marvel Comics for Doctor Doom, which is somewhere in the periphery of Romania or in that area of the world. But it's just like this, it's the size of Rhode Island or something.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've ever actually physically described how big, Latveria is. So they do stuff like this to kind of get the story on, because they can't, if you use an actual historical character, then that almost needlessly clutters the story, because then you have to get the facts right, and otherwise you get, the glass on the tape on the middle of the glasses. Actually, people complain that, for a story based on time travel, you clearly don't know your history.
That's true. I just wish better creative decisions were made about it, though. That's my only thing. Like, somebody even called it Bratvia, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's Bratvia. It's Latveria's, twin cousin. Obviously, that's not the name of the country, but it's one of those things where I'm like, I had so many high hopes for the overall Back to the Future series from IDW, and I think that between Time Served Hard Time and Time Served and now, I was okay with how the main ongoing ended. And like you said, Doc's going to go off and do something else and whatever else. Well, this is it. I just wish this was not Doc versus supposed German spies.
Well, it's not, and I think that's a mistake. Thinking that it's not Doc versus the Germans. It's because throughout most of the story, Doc's very oblivious, as all mad scientists should be. And I should say that as much as I love Dr. Octopus, Doc Brown was my first mad scientist, and that's why I love characters like this, be they good or bad. It's They see the big picture, they see the little picture, but they don't see the whole picture.
Right.
So, yeah, I do love the story as they go to the 1939 World's Fair, and I love Doc's got his little train remote, backs the train up, the cops giving him the business. Yep. And he goes, talks to that one engineer in like one of those new, like, high-tech, streamlined-looking trains, and how in my head, and if I ever met Bob Geller, I'd like to ask him this, is that conductor supposed to be the son or the grandson of the engineer that Marty and Doc talked to in part 3 is like, yeah, can you get this thing up to 80 miles per hour? It's like, well, I suppose if you get the fires going hotter in hell and you get it grade long and straight enough, like that guy, I think that's a relative of him. I kind of love that little bit. He's like, speed it up. Say, what kind of locomotive is that? You know? Yeah. And all of a sudden you got these two guys talking about their quote-unquote cars. And something I mentioned to Mike, one of my favorite little historical details here, folks, is Clara and Jules almost getting free samples of like Marlboro cigarettes from this guy's. Like, here, this will protect your teeth, not like those sweets. And then Claire's, you say it's healthy, guaranteed, no throat infection, no cough. 9 out of 10 doctors, and Doc is like, nuts to you, come away, children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a little... I mean, obviously I'm glad Doc stepped in there and whatever else, but that was a little... Yeah. And I know that's what happened during that time period. Like I said, this was just okay for me. It was like... My hope for something that's called Back to the Future Tales from the Time Train, my hope was that they would try to maybe teach Vern some because, let's face it, Jules is the Doc Brown Jr. He's the intellectual one, and Vern was always the one that wanted to get into mischief and trouble. What I was hoping for with this was like mini adventures, like each issue was a certain time period. Anything but 1938 to 1945.
Yeah. Well, I think overall, and I mean, we'll get back to the actual story of the mini here in a sec, folks. I think the title "Tales from the Time Train" is very misleading because Tales suggests multiple stories.
Yep.
And we really only got 2 stories. We got the first issue with all setting up and dealing with resolving the film franchise, and then them going to the World's Fair here.
Yeah. And
I would think Tales from that would suggest something more of an anthology thing. Like you can have a through story, like a through overarching storyline of teaching the boys, mind your P's and Q's and cross your I's and dot your T's when time traveling, and maybe a greater overarching story than that about something that the whole family has to come together and deal with. And like each issue could be like going to a different timeline, or not timeline, but a different time period.
Yeah. See, that's what my thinking is as well, because like the first issue you can leave it alone, it's fine. The second issue you can set up like where they're going to be going or how Doc and Claire want to teach them. And the problem I have with this is that because Clara is still so new to time travel and whatever else, she's all in this series. She's always, oh, Emmett, oh, that would be so wonderful. And I know that's part of her character, but she's a smart lady. Like, I wish he would have let her in on the time travel things a little bit more, maybe off panel or something, to the point of that she's in on it with him instead of her still like constantly being surprised. Like, it just, I don't know, this whole book, except for that first issue, kind of fell flat for me.
Yeah, no, it's it's like I said, it's time travel, and as the movie showed, because I mean that was the whole comedy of errors and time travel, is like being so completely out of your depth and everything. And at this point, Doc has basically become like Doc Brown, time guardian almost. That like he is literally the most experienced time traveler in the history of the world. Like, and I mean, there's a lot of other stories you get going for. Maybe other people besides like Professor Irving could invent stuff to travel through time, and then Doc becomes like that could have been like a further sequel, like Doc trying to prevent the apocalypse of somebody going back and stepping on a mosquito in the Jurassic or something like that. But this is a story we got. They've gone to the 1939 World's Fair. Doc's like, hey, let's go to the Wonder Bread Pavilion. It's literally the most exciting thing since sliced bread. And Clara just looks at him. Don't they have knives in the future? I can imagine the exasperated and sarcastic look that Mary Steenburgen could have given that if this was a live action thing.
True.
And when we get back to the Germans, and they're like, "Of course he's going to the Perisphere. He's a smart man. I will lay my trap there." And and again, we'd have to talk to who's the artist on this?
Megan Revens.
Yeah, I would like to ask her if I ever met her, and I would hope to ask her that the little wormy dude with the glasses. I wondered if his design was based on Tot from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like that German torturer dude that's face melts off at the end there when they actually open the Ark. Because it very much looks like him. Like creepy little dude, beady eyes. And the Führer shall reward us for getting us out of this miserable nation.
Mm-hmm.
And then Einstein wakes up and sees like the Queen's dog, and he breaks. I love Einstein is Fonzie. Because he literally just gives it like a Fonzie pop, and the door. Like, first of all, is Einstein that smart that he can Fonzie a door open, or is Doc that dumb for not putting a better lock on the fucking time traveling train?
Probably both.
Yeah. And I just love how they go through these pavilions, like they're going to the RCA pavilion. You know, you see that giant cash register. Vern is like, "They cooked a dog," and then Doc almost goes into that overacts like, "Oh, no, pigs and cows and whatever else is right. And just trust me, it's good. It's good."
Yeah.
And I love that. Like, is that the future? And you see one of the things that never came to pass from the World's Fair was Electro, like this robotic man.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that was like a legitimate thing or if that was just like somebody with a script in behind and there was a speaker in the head of that robot.
Could be. Who knows?
But also the boys like talking shit about the robot, and Jules is like, "We recently arrived from a time period where they had real robots."
Yeah.
Like, you elitist snob.
Yeah. And it's funny because when they were in the 2038 timeline, I thought Jules and Vern's actions caused things to go awry. So when they got to 1938, I'm like, oh, this is a 1938B kind of thing where it's a different timeline. Because at first when I was reading this and the way the Germans were talking was like that, they had already won kind of thing, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, I got so lost at the end of that. I don't know.
Yeah, because the boys wander off and they're just hanging out in a tree after talking to the actually, now that I think about this, are you familiar with Team 4-Star?
Mm-hmm. No. Okay,
so we got German Nappa, and the dude in the glasses is German Vegeta.
Okay.
For the listeners, they might get that reference more than you, Mike. So yeah, the boys wander off. We swing back to Doc and Clara, just trying to figure things out. And Doc's kind of worried about the future because World War II, and he knows how World War II ends with the atomic bombs and all that. And then we see Einstein's. We get back to the whole Prince and the Pauper thing, where Prince Rufio escapes after it's like Prince Rufio, that whole thing, and with his handler, like the little blonde guy, it's almost like the butler in the Aristocats.
Yep.
Where he gets jealous and he's really doesn't care about the thing. It's like, oh well, time to get a new dog.
Yeah.
And then we get back to the Germans continue their bumbling escapades to kidnap Doc and Clara, and Doc and Clara walk right by Einstein, he's at the Bratwurst Pavilion.
Yes, he's at the Bratwurst Pavilion.
and he gets taken by the guard who fails to notice his collar is not encrusted with diamonds the way Prince Rufio's is.
Yes.
I mean, and at the end of this like third issue with well, we found your sons, and the Germans like dress up like a cop, and Doc and Clara just fall for it. And I thought you were a smart man, Doc.
Yeah, really.
I mean, up to this point in the thing, like, as far... Like, do you think this would have worked better as, like, one of those, like, how Marvel and DC do those direct-to-disc animated movies?
For me, personally, no. It doesn't work that way. Like I've already said, certain parts of it I enjoyed. But the overall thing of having to face down the Nazi stand-ins or whatever, like, the beginning and the ending of this comic are my favorite parts.
Mm-hmm.
The middle needed so much work. I did not enjoy the whole German thing. Even Einstein as a subplot, like, I think the problem is when you take Marty out of Back to the Future, it's Doc Brown and his family. And honestly, until you develop the character of Clara more, where she is more, as I already said, in on the time travel stuff, not just constantly shocked and awed at what her husband does. And don't get me wrong, husbands and wives need to keep things fresh and whatever else, but this is time travel we're talking about. Yeah. It's a little different than, surprising your wife on a non-birthday or holiday or with, some sort of big spectacular thing, and it just, I don't know, it just didn't stick the landing for me at all.
Yeah, because, like I said, the story of, the Germans trying to kidnap Doc, and Doc and Clara trying to find the boys, and the boys just doing whatever it is they're trying to do, because it doesn't seem like it just seems like there are these two very bright, because look at who their parents are, precocious boys running around, literally probably got some thought in their head that, we're better than everybody because we're from the future and we already know how shit works.
Yeah.
And you got the German mustachioed dude trying to capture them. It's not that the story overall, like the whole story, like it's there and these parts can work. It's
who the family is up against that's the problem.
I don't think it's the family. It's not that, the Germans, like, they're not Nazis. We never see it. They reference, Hitler and Der Führer, and they don't ever, do the salute and Heil Hitler or anything. They are the bad guys. I don't think that's the problem. I think the series was entirely too long. Like I said, first thing, I really think they should have ended it with them going, like, having this escapade, and then Doc finally going back to Marty and Jennifer and letting him know that he's all right and the future's whatever you can make it. Like that, every time I'm at least once a year, I'll watch one of the Back to the Future movies.
Yeah.
Because anyone that says that these movies aren't entertaining or relevant, necessary, well, you have no joy in your soul. And this is one of my favorite parts of my childhood, and in the cluster effer fire that we've had that takes place within a dumpster of this year, we need something like this. I would have ended the series like that, and I would have cut like 2 issues out, like make it at least a 4 issue, because I mean, all the parts are there with the Einstein subplot and the boys trying to find Doc and Clara, and Clara trying to find the boys. It's entirely, I think it's convoluted, but only because they keep the story is, oh god, it's not confusing, but they just keep repeating beats, like the boys almost get caught, Doc and Clara almost get caught.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Chaos ensues. Clara almost gets mauled by Prince Rufio when she finds him at one point.
Yeah,
and it's a Back to the Future story, and based on that, I enjoy it, but I don't love it.
Yeah.
Also, I'm pretty sure that dog handler for Prince Rufio, when he just throws a bucket of cold water on Einstein, I was like, oh, dude, you are going to die so many deaths.
Yep.
You don't treat our boy like this, you bastard.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, though, like I said already, like, I feel like I'm repeating myself, honestly, but it's one of those things where I did not need a doggone story. I mean, if I wanted an all dogs go to heaven story, I'd have watched the damn movie.
Yeah. And I know there's a name for the type of story that, Gail and Barber wrote here. I just can't remember, it's a specific kind of narrative where one set of characters knows what's going on, or at least they know what's going on. That's the Germans. But then you have Doc and Claire and the boys, and they really don't know what's going on, other than they don't know where one half of the family is at any given time.
Yeah.
And then you got, like, the Prince Rufio thing. God, it's just... keep saying that, and I keep expecting Dante Bosco to show up in this comic. I mean,
well, he's gonna show up in this podcast at some point.
I bet you don't even have a 4th grade reading level.
Hemorrhoidal suck navel.
Well, maybe a 5th grade reading level.
Boil dripping, beef fart sniffing, bubble butt.
Someone has a severe caca mouth. Do you know that?
You are a fart factory. Slug slimed sack of rat guts and cat vomit. Cheesy scab picked pimple squeezing finger bandage. A week old maggot burger with everything on it and flies on the side.
Substitute chemistry teacher?
Come on, Rufio, hit him back.
Mung tongue.
Math tutor?
Pinhead.
Prison barber?
Mother lover.
Nearsighted gynecologist?
In your face, camel cake.
In your rear, cow derriere?
Lying, crying, spying, prying, ultra pig.
You lewd, crude, rude, bag of pre-chewed food dude?
Make a race, Peter! You man! Stupid man!
Rufio, if I'm a maggot burger, why don't you just eat me? You two-toned, zebra-headed, slime-coated, pimple-farming, paramecium brain, munching on your own mucus, suffering from Peter Pan envy.
It's one of those things where it's like, we already made the reference to the fact that, the dog's name is Rufio, so, and the only other time I've ever heard that name is Hook, the great classic Steven Spielberg film from 1991.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Overall, to basically put us out of our misery, I would give this...
We should clarify how the story ends, though, before we do that,
all
Mike.
Right.
Eventually, Doc is overheard by little German dude who hears them talking about, well, that's where I've been following of course this is not the real Einstein. So, because Doc's talking about tracking the collar, Doc and Clara track him down, but then both dogs run away, and the wormy dude, like asshole dark handler, blames them. And then apparently this Baratavia, the Barateria, it's pronounced, they've got this German-esque sounding country, but their royal guards look like the beef eaters from England.
Yeah.
And they almost get arrested. The Germans eventually find the boys. The Germans find Einstein's collar, which got loose, and all of a sudden the Germans have advanced future technology.
Which is not a good thing.
Yeah, but by the end of it, they all get back together after this madcap race, and that's the problem. Again, the series, it takes forever to get to that resolution, so it's just it's not necessarily dragging the story out narratively speaking, but there's more here than they need for the story they're trying to tell.
Yep.
So, Madcap rushed through the pavilion. The Germans kind of sort of capture the boys until they literally run into Doc and Clara and Einstein as they're running through.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, the Germans are captured. The dog handler is arrested. And no one goes home. Well, at least on the bad guy side, no one gets what they want.
Absolutely.
Although I do love the final part where Jules and Vern are being chased by a wormy German dude through the scale model of the city of the future. And Doc almost has an action hero moment where he busts out a window and he jumps down to rescue his boys and then goes right through the floor of the model.
Yeah. Without Marty, Doc really is the absent-minded professor. Really is.
Yeah, and then I love how he gets away from the Germans. He's like, we're from the future. We're from the 25th century. And he's like, who do you think designed everything at this fair? Primitive 20th century humans? Of course not. But if you're from the future and why are you not speaking German?
Yeah. Because they just assume that they won.
Yeah, well, because bad guys are arrogant. Mm-hmm. Like that. And I do love, like, the Royal Guards. What are the, it's like the Mask's death scene in the club in Jim Carrey's The Mask, where one of the guards is like, I can hear Mother calling me. And, everyone gets back together. The Germans get taken out by Fairman, who is like this Superman mascot for the World's Fair that they created for this. And one of the Germans, but I tried to tell you, Carl, he is the paladin of fair play. He beat me up earlier.
Yeah.
And it's little things like that. There are so many little things here overall, the course of the story. They meet the real Einstein right at the end.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, the family gets back together, and they've all learned that, we gotta, Dad does this, Mom does that, the boys do it. Like, they all have their parts. They have that better understanding. It's just, like I said, the story is a little too long for what they're trying to do here. And I guess, again, reading the trade, and then remembering when I originally read it, because they had their 1939 outfits. They get back into their 1880s outfits that we see in Back to the Future 3 for some reason, and then they go off into the time stream, and we see, windows into the time stream of stuff that we've seen throughout the series. And
throughout
this
the series
is
and the films, yeah.
Now, I mean, you talked about Back to the Future Transformers. I don't think that's necessarily in canon, unless by the end of it because they established that it's not like the Transformers have crossed timelines. Like, it's 1985, and the Transformers exist in the same world as Back to the Future. So it's out of normal continuity.
Yeah, it's not normal continuity, and honestly, that's fine to me. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm actually excited for when we get to Transformers Back to the Future. It is supposed to be 4 issues, not 6. This was 6 issues. I remember when Tales from the Time Train came out, I had bought the trade when the trade came out. I never actually looked at it. I never knew it was 6 issues until I actually looked at it right before we recorded this podcast. And like you said, honestly, this could have been shorter. It could have been 4 issues instead of 6. You could still have that first issue and then cut out whichever part of the story you want, either the Germans or the dog sub-story kind of thing, and just, I don't know, do it that way.
Yeah. I mean, and also flipping through the trade here, some of the alternate covers.
Oh, they are so good.
Yeah, like you got the pop vinyl one of where Doc and Marty turn to look through the flaming tire tracks.
Yep.
From that image from the film. I love the Enchantment 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, both first film reference and Jules Verne reference. I think my favorite overall was the one where he almost flies into another DeLorean, which was created by, it's an Irish car company. So, it's an Irish car after all, boyo.
Yep.
I know. What was your favorite alternate cover?
It has to be the Funko Pop one, because it's so cool. I love when classic scenes are pop converted to pop style.
Yeah, I will say it's the Irish one, and then number one favorite is the Irish one. 2 and 3 kind of interchangeable, but there's the two great Scott covers, the one where Einstein and Doc are face to face, and then the one that's like a mock-up of like an artist sketching out designing the cover, and it's implied that Doc's fading away when he yells "Great Scott," and you see him, he's in like the middle of his time lab, stuff like that. And then we got that bit at the end that Mike mentioned earlier, folks, like the design and such like that of the time train.
Yep.
Like I said, I'm not saying I'm an expert in temporal metaphysics or anything. It's just, I mean, clearly you see anti-grav units underneath the car when it's flying. It's just the hell.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So, like I said before, going by the GCRN Universal Rating Scale, 0 to 5, you can put in half points if you want. For me personally, this is a 2.5 or 3 at best. Story-wise and plot-wise, the art is at least a 3.5 to a 4 for me, but overall it would be a 3 in total.
I'm giving it a 3.5. It's not bad. It's not great. It's middle of the road. For all like the excitement and the adventure and everything that we got through the movies and the comics before this, and it's not like Doc can't carry a story in his own. We don't always need to have Marty involved, and I think that's something that proves this. Like, you can get a fairly entertaining, a family-friendly adventure story, time travel adventure story, like we got here with the Brown family, but it only goes so far. And like I said, it's a couple issues too long. They drag out some of these subplots way longer than they should have, and Einstein's the best boy, but it took too long for them to really resolve that, and I don't think it really contributed a whole lot to the resolution of the story that they were going for. And the 0.5 is really just the little nods to both the franchise history and history in general. Like, we got the resolution to part 3. We got that the whole, here, cigarettes will protect your teeth better than chocolate will, kids. And Doc's literally, I would ask Gail and Barbara again if this was a nod to the comics bubble bursting in the 90s of buying multiple copies of a comic and planning to invest in your kids' futures, because it's 1939. We don't know exactly what copy or what comic Doc, he picks up like a 6-inch tall stack of comics, and he's like, no, these are going back to the train, and they are not going to be touched.
Yeah, and that's obviously a reference to what he did earlier with the debut of Superman.
Like Action 1 could have been Marvel Comics #1, or Captain America Comics #1. Looking at because you don't get any hard details, but looking at the very basic design of that, I would almost say it's Captain America punching Hitler. And I
Probably.
love... And just to skip over to the MCU for a moment, when the end of Captain America First Avenger, they have that moment where the kids have painted up a garbage can lid to look thing, and you see, like they did, like that's what comics looked like. Like those dimensions, they were super thick like that, not just because of the page count, but because of how thick the paper actually was back then. And yeah, Captain America slugging Hitler in the jaw. So yeah, overall 3.5. Again, like I said last time I was on for the comics, this isn't necessarily the end of the story. It's just the end of this chapter.
Well, it's, as far as I can tell, it's the end of IDW's run with it because, like we've been saying, Transformers Back to the Future, the current miniseries that's going on, this was published 2 years ago, Tales from the Time Train. So, and there hasn't been any other Back to the Future things until this new crossover that they have. So I don't know what they're doing with the Back to the Future license, if anything. So
also, with something they could do, and I forget if I mentioned it last time, we need a 3-way crossover of Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, and Transformers, just so Ectotron and Gigawatt can meet each other.
Yeah, that would be funny.
Because that's essentially a robotic Ray Stantz meeting a robotic Doc Brown.
Absolutely.
And my inner child is running around doing victory laps in my head right now because greatest thing ever!
Yeah.
DeCian, the superhero webcomic. DeCian's got superhero antics and sexy girls. For action, comedy, mayhem, and more, read it now at DeCian.com. DASIEN.com.
Because the world needs another movie podcast.
The Geekcast Radio Network presents for your listening pleasure The Cinema Geek.
Hosted by Amanda, Kevin, Matt, and Dan.
Each week we dive headfirst in the landscape of movies as we discuss movie news, play movie games,
go in-depth on reviews,
and even have a top 10 countdown or two.
Also, don't miss our director retrospective series where we review noted directors' movies film by film. Bottom line is, if you love movies and love podcasts, you need to experience The Cinema Geeks.
You can find us on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, or GeekCastRadio.com.
On the Simplistic Reviews podcast, we talk movies. We talk TV. We talk...
Hello, Julie, what the heck are you doing?
Trying to make our spots sound more exciting by adding explosions.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could have got the point across with sound effects, not the real thing. Car.
Download the show on iTunes or at simplisticreviews.blogspot.com.
I'm sure your insurance company will cover that.
No, they won't.
No, they probably won't.
So coming up next time on the podcast, JT will be back, and we will be tackling Scooby-Doo Team Up Volumes 1 and 2. This features a lot of Scooby-Doo team-ups from DC Comics. This is the ongoing 2013 series that Sholey Fish had done at the time. And, so we're going to head on into Scoobyville, or check in with the Scooby Gang, next time here inside the Pull Bag. You got anything you want to plug before we get the heck out of here?
Yeah, well, you can find me on the social medias at JT from Saskatoon. Can also hear me on the Comic Connoisseurs podcast with my co-hosts Red Ink and Ben Carver, and once a month on the This Week in Geek podcast empire on the Sunday Funnies podcast with Mike Dodd.
Awesome. Make your great escape into comics. Head on over to geekcastradio.com. Check out all the content we've done, and we will catch you next time here inside the Pull Bag.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
You've just heard the latest episode of The Pull Bag, the GCRN's first comic review and discussion podcast. There are several ways to get in touch with us and leave feedback for the show. You can visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. You can rate and leave a review for the show on iTunes. Be sure to leave us feedback. Become a fan of us on Facebook, facebook.com/thepullbag. Send us an email, feedback at geekcastradio.com. Follow us on Twitter at thepullbag and at geekcastradio. So until next time, make your great escape into comics and unleash the geek in you.
Everybody chant, Mikey the microphone, Mikey the microphone.